Is there?
No, my sister sent this to me from
I am
Minnesota.
so jealous.
And besides, it's striped. Oh, Megan wore stripes today, I don't feel bad.
I have a striped
You
mask.
started.
Good morning and welcome to the July 1st Let's Talk. Can't believe it's already July. So we had a Let's Talk yesterday and talked a little bit about some changes with what Phase 5 means for Westminster Village and why we're in Phase 5 now. But I wanted to recap that in case there's anybody watching that didn't get to see yesterday. So Westminster Village is in Phase 5 because last week we had an employee who tested positive to COVID-19. Luckily, that employee was off campus for quite a while. We have now received all the tests for employees and residents that had an exposure to that employee, and all tests came back negative. So again, we kind of got lucky here at Westminster Village, and hope we continue to get lucky, be blessed, and work hard to be lucky. So other reasons that Phase 5 changes are taking place. So very specifically, again, was the positive test on campus. But the other big thing that's happening in Arizona is the number of positives in Arizona continue to grow at a high level. I believe there were more than 5,000 positive tests that were reported today in Arizona alone. So Arizona numbers continue to go up and probably will for at least the foreseeable future. And what that means to us is our people who are leaving campus, our employees, are exposed to more risk every day. Those residents that are leaving campus are exposed to more risk every day. And we have to put some things in place to prevent that risk. And over the last 12 weeks that we've had COVID on, in Arizona as a part of our mind, we've probably had a dozen close calls or so in that 12 weeks, and we've probably had close to a dozen close calls in the last week. So the numbers are getting closer and closer to home, and they're going up across the state. And at the same time, people are getting tired of COVID-19 and all the restrictions. And not just tired of it, because we get tired of a lot of things and still do them. I don't know if any of you pay taxes, but I've been tired of those for quite a while, probably since the time I was 15 or 16 and first started paying them. But we continue to do that. With COVID, we're getting kind of tired of it, and we're getting to the point where we know we can't do this forever, at least not the way we've been doing. So the incident command team, the leadership team on Westminster Village has really looked at this as a 2-week period every day, really, going, how do we get through the next 2 weeks? And it's time to start realizing that COVID's going to be around for a while. It's not going to be around for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 5 weeks. We're going to be dealing with this in August and September and October. So we have to get back to some sense of normalcy. Hopefully you all have seen that starting to take place over the last couple of weeks. We just put in summer flowers, something we normally would have done 3 months ago but put off. We need that sense of normalcy. We need the campus to look good inside and out. We're starting to make those changes. If you've seen the front desk, we have that plastic trash bag up there to protect the staff from the residents and the residents from the staff. Garth has now ordered some plexiglass so we can put up a barrier like we have in Ocotillo in the cafe to keep people safe. And going to more of a semi-permanent fix in some of those areas and moving things back in the direction that make Westminster Village a place people want to live and work. So one of those big changes with Phase 5, because of the longevity of COVID, is, again, we're reducing that restriction on isolation if residents leave campus. So that's a biggie. And some people say, well, that's counterproductive to some of the other things we're doing. But the reality is we've asked residents now for going on 120 days to not leave campus. And if you do, there's a 2-week isolation period that you have to serve in your apartment before you get back out and interact. A couple of weeks ago, I want to say it was 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, we reduced that to 1 week if you were using Westminster Village transportation. We are now starting tomorrow, moving that to a 5-day isolation period if you leave campus. regardless of using Westminster Village transportation or not, that doesn't mean I want to see every car leave campus tomorrow. I hope, again, because of the seriousness of the numbers in Arizona, because of the close calls, that we're not going to see a lot more people leaving campus than we do today. We still will have all the services in place, so you don't have to leave campus for groceries or pharmacies. But we don't want people missing important doctor's appointments and those kinds of things because of the isolation period. One of the things that we know is true, and we're seeing this not just in residents but in staff, is the isolation is causing depression, it's causing mental and physical health problems, and because this is a long-term problem, a long-term issue with COVID, it's time to start making that process of leaving campus a little less burdensome and a little more easy. Again, we still need each of you to make good decisions. Don't go to a big family party. Don't go to the casino. Don't go to the grocery store just to go to the grocery store. If you're going to leave campus because it's something you need to do, and weigh that risk. Make sure you're looking at those numbers. Again, it's not safer today outside of Westminster Village than it was a day ago or a week ago. It's not safer inside of Westminster Village today than it was a week ago or a day ago. There is risk, and each of us have that risk, and each of us need to weigh that risk, not just for ourselves, but for our loved ones if we have a spouse, and for our neighbors and the employees that work here. And I'm asking the employees to do that same thing. Don't take risks that you don't need to take, but also don't miss a doctor's appointment if you have a cancer screening. Don't miss an appointment to get a pacemaker looked at. You know, we need to balance all of that. If you do go off campus for a reason, and it's a good reason or it's a bad reason, and you think you had an exposure, don't come back and expose everybody to that. Get on the phone to home health. Talk them through what's going on, because that can't happen. It already has happened with residents who have gone to their doctor's appointments and then found out afterwards there was an exposure there. Let us help you through that. Don't ignore it. Again, we ask the employees to do the same thing. Like I said earlier, we've had a dozen or so of those close calls in the last week where an employee has said, my wife's or my mom's brother came over, and I found out later that he was coughing and sick, and they don't come to work. And we get them tested, and they don't expose anybody else to that. We need residents to do that same thing if you leave campus. Again, it's safer on campus. It's not 100% safe, but it's safer than being in the grocery store. It's safer than being in the pharmacy. It's safer than being out. So again, I hope that residents will continue to stay on campus for most of their needs. This isn't me saying, you're free, go do whatever you want to do. You're free, make good decisions. Don't put your neighbors at risk. Don't put our employees at risk. Don't put yourself at risk if you don't need to. And again, we're asking the employees to continue to do that same thing. We put out a commitment letter again to employees asking them to stay out of restaurants, to stay out of busy places, to not go to large family events, to report to their managers if they think they have an exposure or somebody they know has an exposure. They're continuing to do the temp checks every day when they come in and random testing. And again, we're asking residents to do the same thing, make really good decisions. It's an opportunity, again, if you want to get in your car and drive around, you can do that. But don't take risks you don't need to take. It puts the whole campus in some danger. But we feel it's important that at this point in time, that we give people that opportunity to get off campus, to get to those doctor appointments with a little bit less restriction. My hope again is still by the end of July now that we can get that 5-day period down to a 3-day period, so that if you do have doctor's appointments every other week, you do have some freedom to move around campus. The other side of that, because of the risk of spread, because of the numbers in Arizona, Ocotillo will stay closed for the next 30 days. We'll reevaluate that, so sometime towards the end of July, we'll make the decision if Ocotillo opens back up as a dine-in restaurant on August 1st or August 2nd. Or if we have to continue keeping that closed and just having delivery and pickup. Donnelly's will still be available 1 day a week. The cafe will still be available, again, all as delivery. Put my glasses on because I forgot to look at my notes. Family visits is the other piece that we're talking about. We don't have a perfect solution to how this is going to work yet. I know there's a lot of concern when we talk about family visits, but when we talk about family visits, we're not talking about opening the campus up and everybody coming back on like they did on February 4th or February 15th. What we're talking about doing is something like what we do now where we have compassion visits. If somebody's at the end of life, our team goes to the extreme to make sure family members can get on and say goodbye. And we do that in the safest possible manner with people all dressed up in their PPEs and bringing people through back doors right to the apartment to be able to visit mom or dad. And what we're talking about doing is a version of that so that people who can't leave campus can see their kids who will come on to visit. We don't know exactly how that's going to work, and we don't know what date that's going to work. And we won't put that in place until we can do so safely. What I think will happen is it'll be much like the compassion visits. It'll happen in your apartment. It'll be a reservation that's made. Somebody will walk the visitor to the apartment. You'll have a 4-hour visit. We'll probably be able to test that visitor before they come on campus to make sure they're negative. There may be a charge associated with that. But again, we hope to be able to sometime in August say we're going to be able to have in-person visits back on this campus. And more news will come out on that, but we won't do it if it's not safe. It's not a risk we want to take where we put people at danger, but we do think those visits are important. And again, both staff and residents are ready to see their loved ones. It's been 120 days. We have to find a way to make that happen, and our team is working extremely hard to make that happen. I think that's all I have. Mrs. Lindstrom?
They're laughing because you call me Mrs.
I know.
And I've never
Yes,
been a Mrs.
Everybody's a Mrs. to me.
I want to.
Mrs. Armstrong?
I want to. I want to see what the face mask looks like. I don't know if people can see it
So
or not on the screen.
this is what the face mask looks like.
And this is the shield. So
These
you
are the
know
shields.
what you'll be wearing. And that happens on day 6.
So how
after you go off campus.
So how the shield will work is effective Monday, it's mandated for all staff members to wear the shield over their mask when they're in a resident area or they're in an area with another employee within about 10 feet of them. So employees are all going to be wearing these. We started handing these out to employees, so you'll start seeing them now. For the residents, these will be available to any resident who wants one. But if you're a resident who has a private caregiver in your apartment, or you're a resident who leaves campus, you'll utilize these in addition to the mask when you're in the common areas. And again, that's the trade-off that we're having. By having the mask and the shield, we feel pretty good that we're not going to spread COVID between two people. So you're wearing the combination, and only if you choose to, or if you're one of the people who leave campus and you're going to then wear it during your 14-day period when you're out of your apartment.
Okay, so that starts on Friday for the residents?
Really Thursday, if any.
Thursday?
Yeah, and Madge is going to go through with those people on the 14-day isolation and help them figure out where they fall.
That's why I was wondering, if you're in the middle of the 14 days, you're going to get a little surprise visit and a little reprieve from.
So Madge will be bringing, or somebody from Madge's team will bring one or two up to the apartment, let you know. So even if you're on isolation now and you need to walk your dog, you're allowed to do that. So it might be on day 1 that you're wearing this if you're going out of your apartment, or even if you're going out of your apartment to your car to go back and forth to doctor's appointments. We're going to ask you to wear that during that 14-day period when you're out of your apartment in a common area.
Okay, residents are allowed, if you're on either the 7 or the 14-day part of a current, you're still allowed to go outside and walk. Will that be allowed in the 5-day isolation period?
It will, that won't change. And again, this is just for independent living. There are regulations for skilled and assisted living, so they still have the full 14-day isolation period, whether they go to the doctors or not. This piece really applies to independent living apartments with the lowered isolation period. But yes, you'll still be able to, again, stay out of the common areas, but if you're going to your car, you're walking outside or taking your dog, I'd say avoid contact with somebody else during that time. But wear the mask. Again, it's just, it really will help, especially because I know some people don't wear their masks over their nose. This is just kind of that extra thing. Very common for people to do this. Oh, let me tell you what's going on. Put it back up. The time it's needed the most is when it's not working the most. So again, we feel good about decreasing that 14-day, that 7-day period by adding in the physical barrier of the mask.
I think maybe half the residents appreciate the loosening up, and the other half are afraid that now I'm responsible, not Westminster, because you kept us safe. Why do we want to fix it if it isn't broken?
Yeah, and the reality is we've all worked hard to keep Westminster Village safe. We all need to continue to work hard to keep Westminster Village safe. What we were doing is unsustainable for 6, 7, 5, 4 months. We have to change tactics as we've been doing throughout this. If we go back to a week ago, we weren't doing the exact same thing that we were doing 3 months ago. Throughout this, we look at, evaluate what tools we have, what behaviors we're seeing, and we work to modify that to work to keep Westminster Village safe. So there are changes constantly throughout this, and again, my guess is there'll be things that come up next week that we don't anticipate this week that will make other changes to keep Westminster Village as safe as possible. But you hit on something that's really important is, ultimately this whole time, it's all been our personal responsibility. There are residents who aren't on isolation who don't come out of their apartment because they know the risk to them. And they're taking that personal responsibility very serious. There are employees who go home and back to work every day and don't vary from that at all because they take this extremely serious and they take that personal responsibility very serious. There are others who are willing to take more risks. And again, that's where that personal responsibility comes in, is we all have to evaluate what risk we're willing to take, and then we also have to be honest with the person we're standing next to, because I don't want to be in the same room with the person who's going to the casino. I don't want to be in the same room with the person who's with their 50 closest friends dancing and hugging. That's not a risk I'm willing to take. I'm being extremely careful at work and away from work. I don't want to share the elevator with that other person. And again, I think it's important if somebody is doing that they're honest with the people around them and saying, you probably don't want to come over to my house tonight for a drink. Because I'm taking more risks than you are. And again, that is a responsibility each one of us have to share that information and to ask that information. If you and I are going to spend time together, I think it's important that I ask you those questions. What risks are you taking that I need to know about? And you should ask me those same questions before we make the decision that we're going to go hang out in the pool.
That's not going to happen.
That has to happen. And I promise you
No
it's happening.
No
pool.
So now you currently use orange dots to give your staff here the heads up as to who is on a 7 or a 14-day quarantine. How's that going to work when now quarantine is shortened and you're asking me to recognize who I don't want to associate with. Are you going to hand out orange dots or anything like that?
No, we're not going to do orange dots or anything like that. Again, the orange dots specifically are for the staff as an indicator. Resident to resident, you're going to have to, again, you're going to have conversations with people, and maybe, again, maybe they're going to wear this, and that might be a good indicator.
Well, we could put orange dots on those.
You could put your own orange dots on it, but we're not going to orange dot anybody.
Okay, I'll work on that. So before you go to questions from the audience today, can I do a little 4th of July safety talk?
I love that.
Oops. I want to talk about fireworks on campus. Westminster has given us no restrictions on that. I'm not anticipating any either, am I? But if you happen to have some bootleg fireworks, you need to hold the match and your friend needs to hold the firecracker so you can light it and trust them to get rid of it in time before it explodes. Don't try to do that all by yourself. Number 2, when I grew up in the Midwest and I had 2 brothers and 2 sisters, and the 4th of July was a wonderful weekend because we got firecrackers to play with. That's the days when they trusted kids to be responsible for taking care of themselves. But we'd get cherry bombs because they were waterproof. You could light them and you could throw them in the creek and it would explode underwater. And in case anybody had any ideas about doing that here, it is only allowed in the cul-de-sac pond, the cul-de-sac fountain pond, the one with no fish. And number 3, if you do get sparklers and you've enjoyed some of them, don't put the rest in with the birthday candles, so the next time you pull out a birthday candle to put on somebody's cake and you light it, big trouble. I want you all to enjoy the weekend. I know we have a special holiday barbecue, and we're looking forward to that. Next.
Megan, make sure we have extra security here on Saturday.
Hi, Tom. I have a question.
I don't feel so bad now.
In terms of your lovely face shield, will Westminster Village supply these, or do we purchase them on our own?
So Westminster Village has a supply of these. So Home Health will probably be the one getting to the people on the orange dot list. If somebody else wants one, they'll be available at the front desk.
Okay.
If you want 14 of them, we can sell you them. But if you want one, we can definitely provide it.
So we don't need to go out and get Krispy Kreme donuts and make our own mask out of the box?
No, but if you call and have a bunch of donuts delivered to the front desk, we'll take care of the donuts and we'll give you the boxes.
Thank you. Will Westminster at some point be providing antibody testing for residents?
So right now we don't see the benefit of doing the antibody test. That may change. Now we have done about 130 antibody tests on staff members. And we did that because those came from the state for the healthcare center and assisted living. We had one person test positive to the antibodies. We actually tested them for the active disease at the same time, and they didn't test positive for the active disease. So with such a small percentages of people actually testing positive to the antibodies, I just don't think it would benefit us at this point in time. Again, that could change. There may be a grant or something from the state where they want that information, but right now it doesn't benefit us like the PCR test for the active cases.
Okay, thank you. No. When we're able to do the testing on campus, how long is the turnaround to get results?
So with the Abbott testing that we purchased, the results are anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes. So we'll get results pretty quickly. Again, our goal with the Abbott testing right now, to start with, is not to use that in place of the other testing we are getting. The Abbott testing, the thing I don't like about it is we're the people who collect the sample and we're the lab. So you lose a piece of transparency. So we're going to continue to use other labs to do testing. Where we're going to use the Abbott testing day one is in those emergency cases. So when somebody comes in and says, oh my gosh, I was at the doctor's 2 days ago and they just called me and said they have somebody that's positive. We're going to be able to do an immediate test. We're still going to send, if it's an employee, we're going to send them home. If it's a resident, we're going to put them on a much stricter isolation than the orange dot list and keep them in their apartment until that test comes back. But we'll have an immediate result that's pretty good, that's going to tell us you need to worry or you can breathe a little. We're going to give you the other test and send it to the lab as well. So for the next 30 days, we'll do that in duplicate. So until we decide we feel very comfortable to use the Abbott testing to eliminate a situation, we're just going to use it so we can breathe a little easier. We also think the Abbott testing is going to be what allows us to get your loved one on campus. So if we can do an instant test when your daughter's coming to the door, we put all those other security measures in place and we can test her and know right now she doesn't have an active case. We feel pretty good about the fact that she can be in your apartment without infecting you. So those are the two areas in the beginning I think we'll see us use the Abbott laboratory testing.
That sounds great. Thank you, Tom.
Yep. Hello.
I have 3 resident questions here. The first one is, can the number of residents allowed in the pool be increased to 10? And we that have water aerobics every morning, we have 8 or 9 people for that.
So right now, we have that limited to 6 because of the size of the pool. We're going to continue to look at that, so I won't be surprised if next week we may change that. But right now, I feel really comfortable with 6, and we'll see if we can go to 10 or not.
Okay.
So I don't have an answer for you yet, but we'll reconsider that at the beginning of the week.
Do we need to continue to make reservations for the pool?
We do. We need to continue to make those reservations so that we don't have an overlap.
Okay. And the last question, down the road, when the family members are allowed to visit, would a friend or 2 be allowed for those that don't have any family members here?
Yeah, so I don't think it'll be exclusive to family. We will, if it's a friend or a family, I don't think that will be a determining factor. So I think, yes, we will be able to allow that. Once we can do it safely, we haven't determined if that's one person at a time or a small group. So we'll figure out what those look like over the next 30 days.
Thank you, Tom.
Hi, Tom.
Hello.
Are independent living residents able to move into assisted living at this time?
They are. So we've had a few moves from independent to assisted or independent to skilled nursing. And I think we even won from skilled nursing to assisted living. Now, it's not easy, and it's not always the best choice to make that jump right now, but in some cases, it's absolutely the right thing to do. I know we have a resident now who's in the process of moving. It's a little bit hard because you do then have that 14-day isolation in your new level of care. So if you move from independent to skilled or move from independent to assisted living, you have to be isolated up there for 14 days to protect those other people, even though you've been isolated over here. So that may go into the determination, but it is possible, it has happened, and it will continue to happen.
This is a question from someone in assisted living. Is it the case that only the Department of Health Services can determine when residents of assisted living may be allowed to go downstairs?
So I think, no, that's not the case. We are holding assisted living because the way we've segregated the building to the same standards as skilled nursing. So the regs in skilled nursing are always higher than anywhere else. So the reason that we have that isolation between assisted living and independent living is to protect assisted living and skilled nursing. That's not necessarily a regulation. It's a regulation in the skilled nursing side, but I don't believe it's a regulation in assisted living. But I'll check with Debbie to see. But because those two are so close and they share staff, it just makes sense for us to have that split where it is.
Okay, I've noticed there's an apartment on the ground level with a sign, window visiting room, and a reserved parking space for window visitors on the cul-de-sac. Please tell us about that.
All right, so because we haven't been able to have in-person visits except for end-of-life or compassion visits, we have, we're using Zoom and technology to keep people in contact. But we also have window visits. So it's the old G Laundry on the first floor of the cul-de-sac is now a place in independent living where if you have your son, daughter, grandkids, friend want to come and visit, you can have an in-person visit, but it's through a piece of glass like this for the protection of both the outside person and our residents. You can make reservations. Kate and marketing and foundation, she's managing that process. And we do a couple dozen of those visits every week. We also have that same type of visit over in the healthcare center. So if you have a loved one in the healthcare center, you can have an outside person come and make a visit. And again, you would do that reservation through Kate. And then in the healthcare center for residents who live in independent living but have a loved one in the care center or a friend in the care center, you can have an in-person visit, but it's through plexiglass over in the care center. So those can all be arranged so that we don't lose that sense of family.
Thank you. If we go out in our own transportation, do we need to let the front desk know, or how does that work?
So you don't need to let the front desk know, but I would recommend it. You will go through a process when you come in. So when the issue's not going out, the issue's coming back. But again, I would still let them know you're going, and then when you come back, one of the guys at the front gate is going to check you in, and they're going to put you on the list. That leads me to something else, is a lot of residents have been tremendous in giving up their parking spaces since they're not going anywhere, and staff has been parking in those spaces. So over the next week or so, if you are somebody who's not used your car in the last 3 months and you're going to be using it now, I'd like you to call the front desk, let them know, because your battery might be dead, your car might be somewhere else on campus, you might not know where your parking space is anymore. Give us a little bit of time. Don't do that tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock standing in the car, because there is a process. We'll have to make a reservation with AAA to come in, or if our security guys can't jump your car and get it started. Again, our hopes are this doesn't mean that 140 people are going to leave campus tomorrow, especially because we're getting close to that holiday weekend and there's going to be a lot of people out. Don't go to Fry's or Costco on Friday or Saturday. Again, make good choices. If you got to go to the doctor's and you want to use your own car and you feel that's more secure than using our transportation, let the front desk know. Armand and that team, they'll get your car back where it belongs. They'll make sure it starts for you, and they'll get you set up. but give them a little bit of time.
Okay, thank you. Are private caregivers tested like employees?
No, they're not, because they're not our employees and we don't always have access to them. Private caregivers work for the resident. We have some standards we can put in place, but they're not our employees. Now, we have had, because of close calls, a few of the private caregivers tested, but they were willing to do so. Again, one of the things we hope to be able to do at some point is have testing be more affordable, where we can test everybody who comes in the door. It's just not affordable at this point. It's still, the Abbott tests are about $40 each, so once we get to that, that'll bring the cost down. The company we're using for employees is about $75 each to $120, depending on which ones are available. So we obviously don't have the ability to test everybody every day and stay in business.
Okay, my last question is prompted by our computer virus, which knocked out the whole system. If the air conditioning went out, how would that be handled? Do we have backup generators for that?
So we don't have air conditioning on backup generators. So if we lost power for a significant amount of time, we would have an issue. Well, that's not true. There are some air conditioners on the backup generator, but not fully across campus. And not all of our air conditioners are computerized. So we have in the past lost power to the air conditioning unit in the middle of summer. And our maintenance team has been amazing and got it back in place. But what happens is we don't have everything on one system. So typically, we're not going to lose air conditioning to everybody in every place. And we've been taking more and more of them off and putting in independent units so that we do have a good backup. If the healthcare center were to lose air conditioning, more than likely the independent side would still have it. If your apartments lost air conditioning, probably Chapman and Nuremberg would still have it. And what we then do is we've brought people back down to Chapman and Nuremberg for a number of hours while maintenance gets the other system up. We did almost 3 years ago, lost the cooling tower, which runs a lot of the air conditioners on campus. We were able to get it back up pretty quickly. If we hadn't, we had a temporary unit, a diesel truck that would hook to our unit and be able to bring air conditioning to the apartments. The other side of that is if it truly was power, we have the ability to bring external generators on campus to run that. It wouldn't happen immediately, but it would happen before it becomes too big of an issue. So there are backup plans, and some of those backup plans have been tested.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The only other question I see on here that we didn't ask was, if there's another 48-hour lockdown, are residents allowed to walk outside of the building? Are they allowed to walk their dogs? And the answer to that is yes. That was allowable last time. It will be allowable in the future when and if we have another positive case on campus. During that lockdown, it's really to stop people from gathering and talking with each other and coming down to the common areas. So if we did have a 48-hour lockdown, it really is a shelter in place, not a lockdown. If you have a doctor's appointment, you can still drive off campus as you normally would. Again, that time is for us to do the contact tracing. That time is for us to make sure anybody who was exposed to that person has got testing and been given instructions on they shouldn't leave their apartment. They shouldn't have contact with anybody else. They shouldn't, go to the doctor without warning their doctor that they may have had an exposure. And again, our hopes are by the time, within a week or so, we'll have those Abbott testing in place and we'll be able to do instant test results with those people. We still may need the 48 hours or the full 48 hours to get some of the other stuff done, but yes, you can walk outside. Yes, you can walk your dog. Yes, you can go in your car and do what you need to do. Okay, well, thank you very much and see you next week.